The moment didn't arrive with an announcement. There was no press release, no teaser, no warning. It appeared quietly, almost accidentally, slipped into timelines, shared once, then twice, and suddenly everywhere. A short clip, just a few seconds long. But it was enough to send the internet into a frenzy, because the faces in that clip were unmistakable. Song Joong-ki, Song Hye-kyo, together again, if only on screen. And just like that, a door many believed was permanently closed creaked open. Fans froze. Some thought it was edited. Others assumed it was old footage resurfacing. A few refused to believe it at all. But the clip was real. And the reaction was instant. Within hours, it climbed trending charts across multiple platforms. Comments poured in faster than anyone could read them. Old fan accounts suddenly became active again. People who hadn't spoken about this pair in years found themselves watching the same few seconds on repeat. Not because something dramatic happened in the clip, but because of how it felt. There was no grand gesture, no obvious intimacy, no dialogue that confirmed anything. Just a look, a pause, a shared presence that felt familiar. Too familiar. Fans who had followed their journey from the very beginning felt something tighten in their chest. It wasn't excitement alone. It was nostalgia mixed with disbelief. The kind that reminds you of a chapter you thought you had finished reading, only to realize the bookmark was never removed. What made the moment explode wasn't just who they were. It was when it happened. Years had passed since the public believed their story had ended. Both had moved forward. Careers had evolved. Lives had changed. And yet, this single clip reopened conversations that never truly disappeared, only quieted. People began dissecting every frame. The angle of their bodies, the way they stood, the absence of tension or the presence of it. Some pointed out how natural it looked. Others argued it was purely professional. But even those insisting it meant nothing couldn't explain why it felt like something. Industry insiders remained silent. No confirmations. No denials. That silence only fueled the fire. Because when it comes to Song Joong-ki and Song Hye-kyo, silence has always spoken loudly. Fans began revisiting old interviews, searching for parallels. Old scenes from Descendants of the Sun resurfaced everywhere, edited side by side with the new clip. Comments like nothing has changed and this still hurts flooded timelines. Younger fans, who hadn't experienced the original wave, suddenly understood why this pairing had once dominated everything. It wasn't just a drama couple. It was a cultural moment. And now, without warning, it had returned. Not as a headline, not as a confirmation, but as a feeling, a reminder, a spark that refused to stay buried. As the clip continued to circulate, one question echoed louder than all the rest. Why now? And perhaps more importantly, why did it still matter so much? The internet had moved on from countless celebrity stories. New couples, new scandals, new sensations. But this felt unfinished. And as fans watched that short clip again and again, many realized the same thing. Some stories don't end when people say they do. They end when the feeling disappears. And judging by the way the world reacted in that moment, this one never truly did. As the clip continued to circulate, something unexpected happened. The reaction didn't burn out. It deepened. Usually, viral moments explode and fade within days, replaced by the next headline. But this one refused to disappear. Instead of turning into jokes or memes, it turned into conversations. Long ones, emotional ones. The kind that stretched late into the night across fan forums, comment sections, and private chats. People weren't asking, are they back together? They were asking something much quieter. Why does this still feel so important? Fans who had followed Song Joong-ki and Song Hye-kyo since the height of their popularity admitted they felt unprepared for how strongly this moment hit them. Many said they thought they had moved on, that they had accepted the ending. That time had softened everything. But that clip proved something else. Time had changed things, but it hadn't erased them. The way they stood near each other felt unforced. Not stiff, not distant. There was no visible discomfort, no exaggerated professionalism. Just a calm familiarity that felt earned, not performed. And that was what unsettled people the most. Because it didn't look like two people trying to recreate something. It looked like two people who never needed to. Soon, analysts and entertainment commentators began weighing in, not with rumors, but with perspective. They spoke about shared history, about how rare it is for two stars of that magnitude to ever cross paths again in a way that feels neutral, grounded, and emotionally balanced. This isn't about romance, one commentator noted. It's about closure or the lack of it. That idea stuck. Closure. Some fans believed the clip felt healing. Others said it reopened wounds they didn't know were still there. Many admitted it did both at the same time. Because Song Joong-ki and Song Hye-kyo weren't just a couple once, they symbolized a moment in time. An era when stories felt bigger, emotions felt purer, and audiences believed deeply in what they watched. Seeing them again, even briefly, felt like being transported back to a version of themselves they hadn't visited in years. As days passed, neither Song Joong-ki nor Song Hye-kyo addressed the clip. No clarification, no explanation, no statement, and that silence felt intentional, not dismissive, just respectful. They allowed the moment to exist without trying to control it. Fans noticed that too. Many pointed out how both actors had grown into people who no longer needed to define their narratives publicly. Their careers spoke for themselves. Their choices were quieter now, more selective. That maturity changed how the moment was perceived. It didn't feel like fan service. It felt like two people standing firmly in who they are, unafraid of shared history. As more time passed, the clip stopped being discussed as a comeback and started being talked about as a reminder. A reminder that some connections leave a permanent imprint, not because they last forever, but because they mattered deeply when they existed. Fans began saying things like, "I don't want anything to happen. I just wanted to see them okay." And perhaps that was the heart of it. Seeing them together again, calm, composed, unchanged in essence, gave people peace. Not answers, peace. In a world obsessed with resolutions, this moment offered something different. Acceptance. And that's why the internet didn't break because of drama. It broke because of memory. Because for a few seconds, a story the world once loved reminded everyone why it had meant so much in the first place. And long after the clip stopped trending, the feeling it left behind continued to echo, quietly, steadily, like a chapter that may never reopen, but will never truly close either. As the days stretched into weeks, the conversation around that clip slowly transformed. At first, it was about shock, then nostalgia, then questions, but eventually, it became something softer. People stopped asking what the clip meant and started talking about what it reminded them of. Fans shared where they were in life the first time they watched Descendants of the Sun. Some talked about being students back then, watching episodes late at night. Others remembered gathering with friends or family, believing in love stories that felt larger than reality. Seeing Song Joong-ki and Song Hye-kyo together again, even briefly, pulled all of that back to the surface. Not just the drama, but the time in their own lives when everything felt simpler. That's when many realized why this moment felt different from other viral celebrity sightings. It wasn't about curiosity. It was about memory. The clip became a mirror, reflecting back a version of the audience that had grown, changed, struggled, and moved forward, just like the two people on screen. Interestingly, younger fans began discovering the pair for the first time. They asked questions. They watched old clips. They tried to understand why a few seconds of footage could cause such a powerful reaction. And slowly, they did. Because chemistry like that doesn't belong to one era. It transcends time. Industry voices began to frame the moment not as a comeback, but as a full circle. Two actors who once carried the weight of massive expectations now standing calmly in their own individual worlds, no longer defined by a shared narrative, yet not afraid of it either. That quiet confidence changed everything. It removed the pressure. No one was asking them to relive the past. Fans simply appreciated that the past could be acknowledged without pain. What also stood out was the respect in how the public reacted. There were no invasive demands, no aggressive speculation. The tone was gentler than expected, almost protective, as if people understood that some stories deserve care, not consumption. Song Joong-ki and Song Hye-kyo had lived under an intense spotlight before. Everyone remembered how loud it had been, how relentless, how heavy. This time, the light was softer. and perhaps that was intentional. Some fans said the clip felt like a quiet agreement between them and the audience, a shared understanding that what once was doesn't need to be explained, defended, or revived. It can simply exist. As weeks passed, the clip slowly stopped appearing on trending lists, but it didn't disappear. It settled into something deeper. It became one of those moments people reference years later, saying, "Do you remember when everyone felt that again?" Because the truth is, the internet didn't break because two famous people appeared together. It broke because people felt something they hadn't felt in a long time. Connection without demand. Emotion without drama. Memory without regret. And in a world constantly chasing the next big moment, Song Joong-ki and Song Hye-kyo reminded everyone of something rare. Some stories don't need continuation. They just need acknowledgement. And sometimes the most powerful comeback isn't returning to what once was. It's showing that it still mattered. And even after the noise finally softened, the meaning of that moment continued to evolve. What lingered wasn't excitement anymore. It was clarity. Fans began to articulate something they hadn't fully understood at first. This wasn't about hoping for a reunion or rewriting history. It was about witnessing two people who had once carried an enormous emotional weight now standing free of it. That freedom showed. There was no tension in the clip. No guarded expressions. No visible effort to avoid or perform. Just composure. And that composure spoke louder than any statement ever could. People started saying the same thing in different ways. They look at peace. They look like themselves. They look healed. That word came up again and again. Healed. Not in a dramatic, public way, but in the quiet way healing usually happens. Slowly, privately, without applause. Fans who had once felt protective, even defensive, toward one or the other found themselves softening. The old divisions faded. The narrative shifted from sides to perspective, from blame to understanding. It was as if the clip allowed everyone to finally exhale. Some fans admitted they had carried unresolved feelings for years, not just about the relationship, but about how suddenly it ended under public scrutiny. Seeing Song Joong-ki and Song Hye-kyo exist in the same space without discomfort gave them permission to let go of what they'd been holding onto. Not because everything was explained, but because it didn't need to be anymore. This moment didn't reopen the past. It reframed it. It reminded people that two things can be true at the same time. Something can end and still be meaningful. A chapter can close and still deserve respect. That realization felt surprisingly comforting. As time passed, the clip became less of a headline and more of a reference point. A quiet example people used when talking about maturity, boundaries, and growth. It wasn't sensational anymore. It was symbolic. And that might be its greatest impact. Song Joong-ki and Song Hye-kyo didn't reclaim a spotlight. They redefined it. They showed that presence doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. That dignity can be more compelling than drama. That sometimes, simply showing up as who you are now is enough. In the end, this wasn't a comeback in the traditional sense. It was something rarer. A moment of mutual respect witnessed by the world. A reminder that even the most talked about stories are still human at their core. And perhaps that's why this moment continues to stay with people, not as a question waiting to be answered, but as a feeling that finally found its place. Because some stories don't need another chapter. They just need a peaceful pause. And in that pause, Song Joong-ki and Song Hye-kyo gave fans something unexpected, yet deeply needed. Closure that didn't hurt. And memory that could finally rest.